Welcome to the Identity. Welcome to the Identity After the Uniform project. Real conversations about military transition, identity, rebuilding, and the impact life after service can have on both the family, the individual, and the family unit. The project exists to explore what really happens after the structure of the military changes, not just externally, but internally too. So no performance, no pretending, just honest conversations that help people feel understood and hopefully less alone. So today I'm joined by Edward. So Edward, can I ask, how long did you serve and who did you serve with?
I served for 10 years in the British Army and the Queen's Royal Irish Hussars.
So how long were you there for?
Well, literally 10 years from joining just before around 17 and a half till leaving on my birthday. So yes, it was 9.5 years, I guess. Leaving on my birthday on the 2079.
So did you enjoy your time in the military?
Sorry, 1979. Sorry.
Oh wow! Did you enjoy your time in the military?
Yeah, I guess I did. Yeah, it was definitely challenging at times, but yeah, I think if I really hated it, I would have found a way to get out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So looking back now, when did you first realise life after the service felt different? Seeing as you'd done the 10 years, what did it feel like when you look back?
I think it was, I was okay when I went to live with my mum, but when I fell out with my mother and went to live in a bedsit, that's when it really hit me, because suddenly, I was doing everything for myself, meals, shopping, and it was a pretty grotty bedsit. So a good experience.
Oh, bless you. So what changes did you notice though in yourself after you served your 10 years? What did you see? What did you feel was different? What did you notice when you left?
I guess I felt that I lost my centre and lost all my mates, because I didn't really have any mates in Nottingham that I could call up and hang around with. I mean, I didn't have a lot of mates in the army, but I had one or two mates that were always there, and you could always chat to and always be associated with.
Yeah. So did you recognise at the time that if transition was actually affecting you at that time?
Yeah, it was definitely a big impact. It took me a long time to swing my life around again.
That seems to be happening right across the board, and I think that's why it's really important. So thank you for actually doing this and taking the time, because it is important that we have these conversations so people that are going through it themselves don't feel isolated, and they understand that actually this impacts all of us. It's not just a one-off. So what part of the military life do you think you underestimate losing the most?
I think it was just the fact that you had, you knew so many people, and suddenly you're in the city street and you don't know anybody, and you can't underestimate the value of having a place to put your head that I mean, you might be out in the fields sleeping on the back of a tank, but you knew where you're going to put your head that night. But
Yeah.
In city street, it was really different, and it was because I've been such a young person, left from home, coming out of the military, and then falling out with my mother and finding I have to sort all these things out was a real challenge.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
I was fortunate because when I got out, obviously, I got out before my husband and he was still serving, but I did have my children, my family unit. So what did you find what did people around you perhaps not fully see or understand when you were leaving?
I think people don't value you as the way you are valued in the army. I mean, okay, it's not a great trade to be a tank driver or a tank gunner or a tank radio operator, But in the services, it was your life, and you were valued as a member of the crew and a functioning member of the crew. But suddenly in Civvy Street, none of those qualifications made any sense. I mean, they tried to rephrase the designation of a driver and a gunner as a gunner mechanic, driver mechanic, but there's very few trades in Civvy Street that see that it's useful. Mechanics is useful. Although I do know that people have walked into jobs like, for instance, at Heathrow Airport from being a mechanic. But certainly didn't work for me. As I told you, I'd been an electrical apprentice and apprentice electrician. So that was that was where I was heading. It made more sense to me to completely change my career paths.
But do you not find it's because you had that knowledge before you joined the military, so you had that to fall back on to a certain extent?
Yeah, but don't forget, I mean, I'd been an apprentice and I hadn't been long before I found, that the abuse I was getting personally as an apprentice. I left quite. I don't think I lasted 6 months. So certainly wasn't a year. I had 5 jobs before I joined the army, and I realised I just wasn't. I wasn't making it in Civvy Street. That's part of the reason I joined the army. I thought that a few years in the army, I would gather myself and I'd come out and find that I could get a career. And it was the case eventually. It just wasn't instantaneous.
Did you have family members in the military before then? Is that why you joined?
My mother had been in the Women's Royal Air Force at the end of the war, which is where she got pregnant in Norwich, in Norfolk, Norfolk area. But no, my Gordon Bell, who raised me, was certainly interested in the military. He played in a band and was a drummer and often wore uniforms, but and he'd been in the RAF for a short period, but I didn't see them as it didn't influence me in that way.
That's quite interesting, because quite a few, obviously, they say they've joined it because it's what they've always wanted to do. It's all they've known, and it's because they come from military families or from the grandparents. So how much of your identity do you think was attached to the military, be it the structure or the purpose, when you left?
I think it was a great deal of my, my inner self was tied up with the military. I just didn't realize it at the time on leaving that quite how much it was. And it's you, isn't it? The military part of you, the guy in uniform is you.
It's our values and standards, isn't it? It's what they train us to be.
It's the same with the people that you can rely on them in a bus stop. If something goes wrong, you can rely on them to fill the gap.
And I think it doesn't matter what grievances you have with each other when you serve, you're always there shoulder to shoulder, aren't you? You just dismiss anything that's gone on or been said. If you know you need that support, it's there.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about perspective. So did your perspective on yourself change, though, when you left? The perspective on your identity when you left the forces?
What do you mean by perspective? Because
basically, what I'm trying to establish is that you have this sense of feeling of what you think it's going to be like when you transition, but when you first leave the military and you take off that uniform, and actually that's not the case.
For me, I think I'd done quite a lot of prep, because I made the decision that after 9 years I was going to leave, and I'd gone to Nottingham and I sorted out some training that after my resettlement course, I would go on this training course. I kind of had a vision of where I was going to go. It wasn't where I ended up, but it was certainly along that path.
Yeah.
So it worked for me in that sense. If you're going to leave one career, you need to have done a little bit of homework on where you're going to go next.
So, but did you get resettlement then? Because obviously a lot of people get resettlement, which helps them sort of look and plan that kind of future for leaving.
No, because as I say, I went from my home to the army, from my army back to my mother's house. And the only kind of help I got was that they sent me a box, my stuff in a box, tea chest as we used to call it, and I got 2 weeks resettlement in Aldershot, training as or retraining as an electrician. So yeah, it wasn't the same way as I guess the family might have support.
No, and I appreciate that. So looking back, do you think enough honest conversations happened around that whole identity and the transition of leaving the forces?
No, I mean, as I said to you, the squadron leader at the time saw me on the tank park sweeping and said, "Is that what you're going to do in Civvy Street?" And when I explained to him that I'd done this and I'd done that and organised, I just guessed the guy. I just didn't fit in with his model of soldier, but in terms of ticking a box and keeping, people there, he wanted to keep me there to keep his numbers up.
Yeah.
But in terms of anything else, he didn't value me. I knew that from the time he kicked me off his tank. He didn't value me.
Gosh, yeah. So how did you handle pressure and stress once you left? How did you find in that first few years that you handled pressure and stress?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, it is risking getting into a punch up in a bar. In the army, if something happened in the NAFI and blows were exchanged between junior ranks, you went home and mopped up your bruises and hopefully made amends with the guy the following day.
No, I get that.
At Civvy Street, you ran the risk of getting locked up for the night and or longer. And yeah, it is a case of you got to be far more wary when you're dealing with other civilians who don't know who you are from Adam.
No, and I appreciate that. What do you find became harder emotionally or even mentally than you expected when you left?
I think for me personally, it was falling out with my mother. I had no idea what she'd gone through until quite recently, when my sister shared with me some of the things that were going on at home. And had I had an inkling of what she'd been going through, I perhaps hopefully I would have been a bit more sympathetic to the pressure she was trying to put on me to contribute to the house. And I was kind of used to having the whatever income I had, I could spend myself. And it was only when I started to move into this grotty bedsit that I realised how big a mistake I'd made.
Hindsight's a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So did you notice changes in motivation, consistency, routine and emotional well-being in those first few years when you got out?
I think there was, initially there was a challenge with motivation. I think that's fair to say. But I mean, I very quickly got over that personally, because I got these plans, 6 months training opportunity scheme, get a short job while I waited for that to start. yeah, I didn't have a, I might have been down initially, but I didn't have a problem with picking myself up and getting on with life. I realize you have to do that. I mean, you can sit about and mope if you like, but it's not going to get you anywhere.
Do you
But
think, though, that your saving grace to a certain extent was the fact that you did have a plan? So you said, right, I'm going to go and do this
yeah,
because
definitely.
I don't want to. So you kept your mind busy and focused, and you
Yeah,
gave yourself that kind of structure.
yeah. I'd recommend anyone who's been in the service more than 3 or 6 years, is like me, has been in 9 or more years, to have a plan. Do your research, find out
Yeah.
what the market's like, what training's available, who's going to pay for it, and yeah, and if possible, where you're going to live, and how you're going to support yourself. It's very, very, very important.
It is, isn't it? It's definitely that kind of forward thinking, having that plan, because we're so used to being told what to do, where to go, when we're going. And now it's a case of, no, you've got to think for yourself.
It's still, many years later, 30 years after leaving the services, I'm there working as an electrical design engineer on with architects and engineers, and I'm sitting there thinking, what do I do next? And there's no one to tell you what to do next. You're supposed to be, supposed to be an engineer. You're supposed to know what to do, and your fallback is always, like, because I was only ever a lance corporal, that someone's going to tell me, and it's very hard to keep yourself. What am I going to do next? And yeah. Even today, I'm challenged with that.
So do you find there were periods where you did feel disconnected or either overwhelmed or stuck, or are you saying you didn't have that kind of feelings because at the end of the day you had a plan?
It hits you. It definitely hit me in odd places. When I became an electrical engineer and walked into an office, a completely new environment, and you had to be polite to the lady who's in charge of the stationery cupboard, or who can get you things. It suddenly hits you. You've got to bend and mold and change yourself, and yes sir, no sir, and 3 bags full sir, and because that's one of the mistakes I made. What I was a bit arrogant, to be honest. Like, I got told off for parking in the boss's car parking space. I had no idea how you could tell it was his parking space, except that it was outside the building and it was near to his window. But
Yeah.
and then when the guy told me off about it, I was quite blasé, and so I didn't last long in that particular job, particular environment.
What do you think helped you start regaining stability again once you left, and how long did that roughly take?
I think for me personally, it was finding my wife, my Jill, my wife, and forming that relationship and getting married. That, because suddenly everything's about family. It goes from being about you to being about family, and even that had challenges, because you've just got a mindset of I'm big and strong, and I can order people about, and you have to learn to cooperate and and apologize occasionally.
Yeah, I always say sorry a lot. So once you left, who were you outside the uniform?
Well, eventually I became, Ted the electrical engineer, and it was a slow transition, because training as an electrician was helpful, but it took time. It took time to. Fortunately, I had a background at school. I'd done some technical drawing. My writing was terrible, but I could do the drawing work of an engineer, and I'd learnt to do the limited amount of maths that I needed immediately. I mean, and then of course I went on to do an ONC and HNC and increase my maths tremendously. But yeah, it's yeah.
So did you ever feel like you lost part of yourself once you left the services?
Definitely, definitely. Initially, it was a big. It was like a kind of like dropping an anchor, but then finding that having dropped an anchor, a weight behind you, you're then uncertain. Like a boat, you dropped an anchor in the sea, and lost an anchor. You're suddenly thrown each way and every way by the wind, and you have to suddenly. There's no rank system in city life, and you suddenly have to figure out, how you sit amongst other people, and who's the boss, and who you got to be polite to, and who you can tell something to get something, and who you can't.
I can't believe I'm going to ask this because it's actually not on my cards. Do you find that, I know I did when I left, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I thought, they've not walked my life. They don't know what I've done and what I've seen. So who are they to basically have a conversation with me?
Yeah. I mean, you walk into an office, a new office, as I did, and there's someone who's the bee's knees in that office. She might be just a secretary or a HR or something, but she's the bee's knees, and you're just you're just annoying, and you've got such a different view on life that you don't see them as almighty, whatever they think.
No.
They see them as an hindrance to you getting on with your job.
So how do you think transition affected your confidence, if it didn't, your direction and your self-worth when you were leaving?
The truth is, for me personally, leaving the services was a good thing, because I suddenly found a much greater career in civilian life. I went into the army because I couldn't find a job. I had 5 jobs and couldn't really settle down. I remember going into the corner grocery shop and asking me if I could have a job, and the guy wanted to know what skeletons I had in the cupboard, because he could see, what he could see was a reasonably intelligent person walking in asking for a menial job, but and you can't suddenly, in the army, they give you this test that you do at the recruiting office, and that's it. You're now fitted into this corridor. I could be infantry, I could be tanks, but I couldn't be engineers. In Civvy Street, the line was blurred enough for me to move from electrician to engineer and into design world. And so, for me personally, I kind of found myself eventually in Civvy Street, but it did took many months.
I'm glad you said months, not years, because it's took me 12 years of searching to get to where I am now, to register who I am. So I'm glad you said months, because that gives people hope. So I know we talked about the fact that you had a plan and you had this kind of structure because it was geared around your plan. But what also helped you begin rebuilding identity again after you left the forces?
I think, we've talked about family, and we've talked about my home, my mother's home, where I started with. But for me, it's also was faith, because I'm a strong believer in the Christian faith, and I wasn't a Christian in the army. I was pushed towards it often. I was sent on a 2-week course in, with a religious group, a Church of England kind of group, which I just saw as a holiday because they had nice food and nice beds. But I mean, about a year after I'd left the army, around the time I'd met my wife and we were starting to court, I found a church. My brother was a member of it, and I'd gone into that, and that, for me personally, it was a turning point in my life.
What was it?
Faith, finding faith, finding the Christian faith.
And was it the people though as well? It wasn't just the faith; it was the community, something that you belonged to, part of.
I don't think that for me personally, that's not the case, because I've had treads from one church to another. I mean, when I'm working in Nottingham, and I as I tried to briefly explain, I was working for Wimpey's in Nottingham, and I kind of upset the boss by parking in his space, and there was two or three other things that. So they sent me off to London, and I had to move house and home and church and everything to London. But so it's not the particular group of the church. It's the fact, like on the Christian motorcycles, which I'm a member of, you meet people and you instantly know, because they're Christians, that they think of faith in the same way you do, and you can chat about your faith, even though one guy might be a Roman Catholic and another might be Church of England, another might be Pentecostal or Methodist, or those churches are all separate in the world. But when you've got the commonality of riding a motorbike, you've got something common to talk about, and it does help to
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're saying. So what does purpose look like for you now? I know you mentioned it when we spoke to each other previously, and the way that you help others. But what does purpose look like for you now?
Yeah, so as a retired guy, it's and I retired because I had a motorcycle accident in 2019, and I for about a year I couldn't do anything, and by the time I could do anything, we'd moved. My wife and I decided to move up north into the countryside, so there really wasn't the option to jump back into the engineering life in London. But I'd quite a few times I found charities to work with. I'd worked with street pastors. I worked with an AIDS charity, but recently I've joined Care After Combat, and that for me is, I go into prisons. I just spoke to the guy today. I've got my dog, one of my 3 dogs, Reggie, is signed up as a PAT dog. That's what does PAT stand for? I've forgotten now. But PET does therapy.
Okay.
So the dog is a therapy dog, and of course you go into a prison and there's lifers, people who've been there, many years, and they can't have pets in the prison. So you bring a pet in, and wow, they're all over it. So that's kind of the way I'm personally going at the moment is, and these are we're talking about a charity that looks after ex-servicemen.
Yeah, I thought that was. What was the charity called again, please?
Care After Combat. It was founded by a guy called Weston. I've forgotten the Welsh guy who was on the Sir Galahad, and Jimmy, a comedian. I've forgotten his name as well. Plus Goose, a good friend of mine, Gary Cryer, his real name is. He's ex-para and ex-special forces, and when I linked up with him, I felt this was a good charity to join. And,
so do you go into the prisons daily, or is it just weekly? How does it work, if you don't mind me asking?
To be honest, I've only been into 3 in about 5 years, because it is quite difficult to set up. You have to you have to get the governor for that particular prison has to be signed up for it. You need to be escorted, because unlike the guys who do it for a living,
Yeah.
I think that's called Op Phoenix, and there's an operation funded by the NHS that Care After Combat do, where there's a guy who's actually paid to go into prison, but volunteers like myself, we don't get in quite anywhere near as often. But when we do,
it's still amazing the fact that you're going in there and you're trying to help other people.
Yeah.
Hats off to you, seriously.
Yeah.
What do you find gives you structure or grounding today?
Well, my faith, my family, my the charities I work for. That's my foundation. So.
No, and I appreciate some of these questions now are quite repetitive, but it's mainly because I really want these interviews to sort of help people that externally are coping, but internally they're not, and they've not got that kind of something to relate to. So they're quite isolated. So the reason I repeat the questions in a different format is just so that they might listen to it in a different way and go, actually, now I understand. So I'm going to ask again, sorry. What habits, routines and perspectives help you most now?
What habits? Good habits, I suppose. I walk the dogs. I've got lots of bad habits. I like to go for an hour's walk with the dogs, and at the end of it, my reward is just to go to the local cafe and chat with the staff there. The church on a Sunday. I get involved in the music, and I get involved in other ways in the church. I get involved in the Christian motorcyclists. We go out and ride occasionally. We meet once a month, and I get involved in Care After Combat. I went through that, that place where, where I had nothing and I felt lost and kind of abandoned. I mean, I don't think I didn't feel I was supported enough by the services in leaving. They were eager to get me in, eager to use me, but once you decided to go, you're just a burden on the system, and the sooner they get rid of you, the better.
It's one of them, and I've spoke about this for many years. You join on your own and you leave on your own. And I think the hardest battle I found was, and I explained this to my husband when he got out, I said, just because your friends are not speaking to you right now and checking in daily, it's only because you're part of their circle. And it always is the case, isn't it? And it's where it's the job first, then the family, and then it's the soldier. So it's not the fact that they don't care, because they do. It's just the priorities are not there, and it is genuinely not their fault. It's just the way we were as trained soldiers at the end of the day. So
can I say that the guys I knew in the services who I felt close to, that I got in contact with after, we didn't kind of gel in civil life. One guy had a big downer on the Christian religion, and he was my closest mate. But another guy got a different idea of what religion constituted, and so I kind of fell apart from those guys. I've met guys in events and got on quite well with them, but they've got their own life to lead in City Street.
And I appreciate that. What advice would you give to someone that is currently leaving the armed forces?
Do your homework, sort yourself out, find out as much as you can about where you're going, and find ways to keep in touch with your mates. Particularly if my unit was in Paderborn, Germany, and we're moving to Tidworth, and I didn't have an idea of how to contact anyone in Tidworth. I hadn't thought about the need to. It hadn't occurred to me that I might want to give, someone a ring, and you can't really. I mean, they're mobile phones nowadays, so maybe you can, but you couldn't do in the days I left. They're all landlines. You ring up a camp, and you've got to go through a loads of levels, and then someone's going to get the ump with you because you've dragged them off their job and just have a chat.
What do you wish people understood more about life after service?
I wish it would be great if people understood the difference between civilian life and military life when you leave. It's I guess people who've gone from school to work to a career and then gone into the army have got an advantage over boy soldiers and people who didn't spend a lot of time in civilian life or didn't get on with a particular career in civilian life. I'm not sure if that answers your question, or whether I'm going down the wrong road.
What do you wish people understood more about life after service? And I know I appreciate what you're saying. It's keeping those friendships open when you leave. It's not closing the door behind you is fundamentally what I took away from what you were saying. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you've got mates, they're gold dust. You need to keep hold of them and keep in contact as best you can.
Honestly, Edward, I swear I cannot thank you enough for this time that you've spent with me, because I'm hoping the people out there watching will just relate and understand and hopefully take some of your learnings and maybe implement them, especially when it comes to planning, because it isn't just about that kind of resettlement window. It's about finding out who you are, and for you that was your faith that became your biggest driver, if I'm right in saying. So honestly, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to say to somebody watching this who may currently be struggling themselves with identity and this transition?
I think you've just got to kind of pull yourself together. It's an extraordinary thing to say, but it's all about you, and you need to value yourself and put your shoulders back, and give yourself orders, if you like. Give yourself telling off. I was going to use the other word, but try to be polite. Give yourself a telling off, and pull yourself together. Get your SHIT together. Do your admin. You'll be much better off. Get in touch with a dentist and everything else you need to do. And don't leave yourself to fall apart.
You've got to register for a dentist, haven't you? It's not like in the military where we get given one. Register for the doctors. So thank you for watching. I am Gemma Gardner, creator of the Identity After the Uniform project. If this resonated, please subscribe, share and comment below where you're actually watching from in the world, because every conversation shared helps us reach more people who may be suffering in silence. So together, hopefully, we can continue creating conversations that should have started a long time ago. So I'm sending love to everybody out there.
Cheers.